Good morning and welcome to Spotlight 92. I'm your host, Malvin Massey, and of course, every Thursday we talk to the movers and shakers of the community, the people that are making things happen for your benefit and mine. Our guest today is here to talk about a subject that we do not think about very much, even though we participate in it all the time, especially when the seasons are going on, particularly football for me. And in basketball season just finished, and at least the pro basketball season just finished. And it's something that it's about sports, and it's about rivalry, and it's about psychology. There's a lot involved in it. And our guest this morning is here to talk about all of those things. He is, he is an associate professor of sports commerce in the Kimmons Wilson School of Hospitality and Resort Management here at the University of Memphis. He received his Ph.D. in sports administration from the University of Northern Colorado, which also holds a master's from Texas State University in San Marcos. That's where my wife was born. And a BS from the University of Texas at Austin, where my niece goes to school right now. His primary line of research addresses rivalry in sports and its impact on fan behavior. He's developed and validated the sports rivalry fan perception scale to measure the perceptions fans have toward their favorite team's rival, and glory out of reflected failure to describe the joy fans experience when someone other than their favorite team defeats their rival. His internationally recognized work has been featured in publications such as the Wall Street Journal, The Secret Life of Sports Fans, The Science of Sports Obsession, and he is the founder and editor of SportsRivalry.com. He has taught sports management, sports marketing, sports promotions, and sports fan behavior at the undergraduate and graduate levels here at the University of Memphis, and the global sports perspective at the undergraduate level. Now, after all of that, his name is Dr. Cody T. Havard. Good morning, Dr. Havard.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Thanks so much for coming by. And like I said, so this is a topic that, we're all involved in the sports. We had a student who was here working at the radio station some years ago, and his name is Mark Bolabosh. His father actually is chair of the language department. He didn't understand American football. He didn't understand why we were so into it, and how we bad talk each other and still remain friends and all that kind of thing. And I'm sure, there are rivalries in soccer and everything else. But what got you interested in figuring out what sports rivalries are all about?
Well, I think the kind of a longer answer would be I've always been interested in why one group treats a different group or another group differently on an individual level, and then also as the group as a whole. But kind of for sports specific, in 2008 is when I moved to Colorado and I started my Ph.D. And being an alum of the University of Texas, I kept following the football team when I was there, and that is the year that Texas and Oklahoma both were undefeated, and when they played each other in the annual Red River rivalry, Texas beat Oklahoma on the field. Texas went on for the rest of the season, and they lost a late season game to Texas Tech. Oklahoma then in turn beat Texas Tech, so the three teams ended up with a three-way tie to see who was going to go on and play for the Big 12 South Championship. And that year, it went to the fifth or sixth tiebreaker, and Oklahoma ended up being a tenth or 0.4 of a point ahead of Texas in the BCS rankings. So Oklahoma gets to play in the Big 12 championship game. Texas ends up going to, I think, the Fiesta Bowl that year. Oklahoma wins the Big 12 championship game. They end up playing the Florida Gators in the national championship game. And I remember watching that game thinking, I really want Florida to win. And I have no affinity to Florida whatsoever, besides being a fan of Walt Disney World and that being there. I really have nothing else that I really have been to Florida for. And I really didn't care if Florida won any other games other than that one they were playing right then. And so then it dawned on me, it's not so much that I want Florida to win. I just don't want Oklahoma to win because I felt as though Texas should have been there. And so at that point, then I started thinking, if I'm feeling this way, there has to be other people who feel this way as well. And so I started reading into this, looking into this, doing interviews, and that's what ultimately led to Glory Out of Reflective Failure, which says that when your rival team loses to someone other than your favorite team, a person can find joy in that, and personal joy, and then also feeling that their favorite team is better than the rival team who just lost in indirect competition. And so, from there, it's really taken on this, taking me down this path, this very psychologically driven path, and trying to understand individual behavior and group behavior. And so it's been something that's very interesting, obviously, to me. And people say you find your research based on personal experiences, and that's where it starts and kind of builds from there. So,
man, it was like you found your pet rock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's pretty
definitely
good, though. And it's something that, like I said, we all subconsciously are involved in.
Mm-hmm.
Our teams, over the years, here in the United States, anyway, as far as football is concerned, we always have had I've always had a pro team that I pulled for,
mm-hmm.
and of course, a college team. And it's so thrilling right now. The University of Memphis has a football team we can pull for that goes along with that. But I found myself finding back in the old days when I was in the military, everybody that was from Los Angeles, New York, the big cities, they all had a team.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Memphis, right then, at that time, it was the St. Louis Cardinals that was the closest professional sports team for us. And Jim Hart was the quarterback at St. Louis.
Yeah.
They weren't doing that well. They never did. And I was stationed in Kansas. And I had to have a team. Everybody had a team. I got to get me a team. And I was sitting there watching the Oakland Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs. And in Topeka, Kansas, where I was stationed, it was like Kansas City Chiefs were gods.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere you looked, there was red, there was Chiefs, there was bad news, bad mouth, and everything else. And they hated the Oakland Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, fine, that's going to be my team, the Oakland Raiders. I had no affinity to California at all, but I picked that team. And over the years, it has been that thing. So I'm still a Raider fan now, even though I'm not. I have never been in Oakland.
Mm-hmm. I
feel an affinity to that team. I feel when I see them lose, it just breaks my heart. When I see them win, I'm on top of that. That is what's the cause of this psychological imperative that we have to have a team, somebody to pull for? Have you found that?
Well, the prior research, a researcher by the name of Daniel Wan, he really started a lot of this team identification research in the early 90s and looked at why people associate with teams, when they start associating with teams, or I should say the causes that they associate with teams. And the most common cause is actually family makeup. So your family or significant others play a major role in which teams you're going to identify with and even which sports you're going to identify with. Mm-hmm. And inside of that, in particular, the research shows the male figure or the father figure plays a very significant role in that. Now, it is interesting because I've heard numerous people have your experience where it's almost as though you choose a team because to stand out from the crowd, so you don't seem like you're part of the crowd. And a study done back in the 70s was talking about basking in reflected glory, and ultimately says that when a team is successful, people rally around that team because we all want to show that we can be successful. And one way to do that is through the vicarious achievement of a sports team. And in turn, when a team loses, people tend to distance themselves from that or cut off reflective failure. And all that goes back to we as individuals want people to see us as successful. And we want to feel successful on a very personal level. One way to do that is to identify with successful others. So if you identify with a team that is successful, then their success becomes your success. You think about after a team wins, you really feel as though you can possibly be a better version of yourself, whether you're working on a project or If you're in school and working on a paper, you feel you can do something better, or you're more able to reach your potential. Now, on the flip side of that, your favorite team's win becomes your win, or success is your success, but their failure is also your failure. And so a lot of people struggle with how to deal with that. One way of dealing with a failure by your favorite team is to compare yourself to an out-group. And when we talk about sports rivals, we're really talking about in-group and out-group. So I research in the context of sport, but really if you take it out of the context of sport, it's about one group versus another group. And whether that's in politics, anything, anywhere where there are groups that exist. And so we try to compare ourselves against someone else that we can feel successful toward.
Yeah.
So, if our favorite team loses, then maybe we could say, hey, we lost, but such and such rival team lost as well. So there's a way, and we didn't lose as bad as they did.
Yeah.
We're as people, we're always trying to compare favorably to someone else. Now, one thing about rivalry is you have, when your group, you like to have that other group that you're consistently going to compare favorably against. So maybe a group that might not perform as well as you do, or your group, but then you also like that group that's on the same level or even a little bit higher than you. So if you defeat that group or are successful against that group, that's a really big thing.
Yeah.
And you have more of that psychological or those psychological benefits after defeating that group.
I mean, that really is an involved psychological situation. If you just tuned in, by the way, this is Spotlight 92. We're talking to Dr. Cody T. Havert, who is Assistant Professor of Sports Commerce at the Kimmons Wilson School of Hospitality and Resort Management here at the campus of the University of Memphis. And we're talking about the impact of sports rivalries. I pulled up, like I said, I didn't want to sound like an idiot trying to talk to you about, because it's something I hadn't thought much about. But there's a guy named Gavin Kilduff. Mm-hmm. Familiar with him? Professor at
Stern. Used his work a lot.
And he said he found that rivalry increases both effort and performance with players, and it also increases group cohesion. Universities with more intense rivalries receive donations from more of their alumni, and patriotism is never as great as during the World Cup, which we know that. And most of us don't even pay attention to soccer, but when the World Cup comes around and we're involved, we're all into that. It said, but he said that he and his collaborators have said that through social annual meeting, social personality and social psychology, showing rivalry also has a dark side. It increases unethical behavior. We've seen that with the fighting at the soccer matches and things like that. This unethical behavior, is it triggered by the same thing you were talking about? Is it triggered by our past? Is it triggered by our perception of being too involved? People get too involved with these things, and it makes them go off act crazy.
It can be that when we're involved with the favorite team, and the more identified we are, or the more we follow that favorite team, one way of showing that is by comparing ourselves to the outgroup, and in some ways derogating or trying to put down the outgroup. And that's one reason why I developed my collaborators and I developed the Sport Rivalry Fan Perception Scale, is to try to look at 4 different perceptions of the outgroup. And so we look at things that to deal with competition, such as how likely are you to support your rival team against another team, how excited or the sense of satisfaction you get when your favorite team defeats the rival team. We also look at characteristics that are outside of the field of competition, such as the perceived academic prestige or prestige of the city of your rival team if you're looking at the professional level. So how prestigious is the academics at the university of your rival team? Or how prestigious do you think the city is where your rival team plays? And then we also look at fan behavior. A lot of times people feel as though fans of the rival team behave more poorly than fans of their favorite team. Again, because we want to find any way we can to try to compare favorably to the outgroup. And so we really developed that, and that was developed to try and understand how a person feels toward their outgroup, and in some ways the level of negativity and the level of intensity a person feels toward their outgroup. And so what we have started to do is looking specifically at negative behavior and how negative behavior is influenced by the phenomenon of rivalry or the presence of a rival group. And a couple things that we found is people are highly identified fans. This is something Daniel Wan found before I started working with him. Highly identified fans are more likely to consider acts of anonymous aggression toward a rival team than fans at lower levels of team identification. What I've started to look at is when teams that changed athletic conferences, like the University of Memphis did, several teams in the SEC, in the Big 12, Big 10, when they changed or joined a new conference, we started to compare their perceptions of their new rival versus the perceptions of their old rival. So I'm a University of Texas fan. I'll use Texas and Texas A&M as an example. So we looked at, with Texas A&M fans, we first asked them before they joined the SEC, what are their perceptions of University of Texas Longhorns and what are their perceptions of the LSU Tigers, because they identified LSU as the anticipated rival in the SEC. And we found that fans of Texas A&M were more negative toward Texas than they were toward LSU because there's 100 years of history between Texas and Texas A&M. They also were more likely to consider anonymous aggression toward Texas fans and participants than they were LSU fans and participants. Recently, we've gone back and we looked at this now that schools like Texas A&M and Missouri and Nebraska, Colorado, now that these schools have played in their new conferences 3 or 4 seasons at least, we collected data and looking at trying to answer that question again and trying to find, is there a specific time when the perceptions of the new rivals sort of take the place of the perceptions of the old rival? Really what we found was fans as a whole are more negative toward their current rival, so the rival that they're playing now in their new conferences, on issues like fan behavior and academic prestige, so those things that don't necessarily involve the on-field competition. However, they're more negative toward the former rival when you look at on-field characteristics such as willingness to support the rival against someone else and the sense of satisfaction they get when their favorite team defeats their rival team. They're still more likely to consider anonymous aggression toward their former rival than they are their current rival. And one other thing on that, I've had people ask why we look at anonymous aggression so much. And some of the questions we ask are, how likely are you to consider tripping a coach, fan, or player of the rival team? How likely are you to consider breaking the leg of a coach, player, fan of a rival team? And then how likely are you to consider physically harming, or in some cases, the question has been asked, how likely are you to consider murdering a coach, fan, or player of the rival team? And consistently, we've done this 6 or 7 times now, and whenever you do something 6 or 7 times, it's pretty robust, it's pretty reliable. Yeah. We found that about 1 to 2% of fans indicate they are definitely willing, so the highest answer they could give, they're definitely willing to consider committing that most heinous act of aggression. And so on the face of it, that doesn't seem 1%, okay, but when you look at, when you get up to an arena with 10,000 people, 1% of that
it's 100
people. When you get up to 100,000 people, which are the size of some of our college football stadiums, that's 1,000 people inside those stadiums who have at least indicated this. And our hope is that they're exaggerating. But even the fact that they're exaggerating, as a sport manager and as a practitioner, you have to be cognizant that in this size of a crowd, there's possibly 1,000 people who have at least indicated that. And so maybe the things that happen as far as the on-field competition, the skits that people have or that teams run in between timeouts and in between quarters, for most people, those skits that, those kind of funny skits where you find some way to put down a rival fan, for most people, those skits are just fun. And they understand that's nothing that should ever happen. But for some people, that possibly can validate some of the feelings that they have. And so we have to really be careful about that as practitioners.
I can imagine that you probably get questions from, as violence seems to be taking over in our country more, you're starting to get more and more questions about how to manage these rivalries and the aggression of these fans.
Well, and in the United States, we still use rivalry to promote games. Yeah. You go across and you go into Europe and you look at European football, a lot of times they're trying to combat this, or they're trying to in some ways quell these rivalries or downplay them. So because the instances of fan rival aggression and things that have happened across the sea in Europe, and unfortunately we have had examples of that happening here, where you look at Brian Stowe and you look at some of the more recent examples of there was an example of Dallas Cowboys fans and Green Bay Packers fans following this most recent playoff season, and so we've had some really unfortunate issues in this country too.
Our country has not had, I think in Europe, since they have had connections over so many centuries of rivalries and wars and kingdoms fighting each other, I would imagine that carries over into their sentiment nowadays too.
Yeah.
If you just tuned in again, by the way, this is Spotlight 92. We are talking with Professor Cody T. Havard, who is Assistant Professor of Sports Commerce in the Kimmons Wilson School of Hospitality and Resort Management here at the University of Memphis. He's also the founder of SportsRivalry.com. And another part of this that we hadn't touched on yet is that there is money involved in these rivalries. I mean, they are promoted. I was looking at the professional sports rivalries, and one in particular, the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. And it said that the Red Sox, even though they are not one of the most stellar teams, but they are the third most valuable team behind the Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers because of their rivalry with the Yankees. Even better than Philadelphia is a bigger market, but the Boston Red Sox, because of their rivalry with the Yankees, they're worth more money. That plays out in colleges as well, right? I mean, that's the tension between these conferences and things.
Well, and we've seen teams and athletics departments, they consistently try to use each other. They'll work with each other to try and promote those rivalries. And you have your historical ones, but also you have, especially with the conference realignment, you have these newer rivalries that are popping up that in some ways people feel are trying to be promoted or created. And so one thing that we did was looking at the impact of a promotional title and logo on perceptions of a rival team and behavior toward a rival team. And what we found was we exposed people to three different titles. It was either a positive title, such as blue and red friendly. This included or involved two teams that had colors blue and red. So there was the blue and red friendly, there was the blue and red rivalry, and then the negative title was 498 miles of hate, because that was the approximate difference between the two schools. What we found was the people exposed to that negative title, so had the word hate in it, they were more negative toward their rival than the people exposed to the positive title. They were also more willing to consider acts of anonymous aggression than people exposed to the positive title. So another step we took from there is looking at mediated messages. And so we exposed people to a positive message, such as the two rival teams participating in a joint blood drive or food drive, a neutral story, which was just a preview of the rivalry game, and the negative story, which is the rival fans get into a fight. And what we found there was people exposed to that negative story were, again, more negative toward the rival team and their prestige than people exposed to the positive story. But we also found people exposed to the negative story were more negative toward their favorite team than people exposed to the positive story. So for a practitioner, that tells you that when negative stories come out, it not only hurts your rival team's brand, it can hurt your brand as well. And so as practitioners, people have to really try to produce and promote these joint positive stories between rival teams, because you can't necessarily always predict or control when a negative story is going to come out.
Well, now this is relatively new research.
Yes,
that
it
you
is.
Started, so it's ongoing, is it not?
Yes, very much so.
You got some things in the works now?
Yeah, we do. So we when we started sportrivalry.com, we have a lot of historical information on there, as far as you can go on and you can look at the histories of rivalries, their records against each other. But we also have podcasts on there, audio podcasts. We've started to create movie podcasts and comic strips about this. And a project that I'm really excited about now is, a couple ones. We're going to actually start having podcasts where students are going to create these podcasts of upcoming rivalries, and there's a research aspect of that as well. But one in particular project is we have started to create comic strips of historical rivalries, comic strips of sort of stories of how people should treat their rival teams. And then from those comic strips, we've created movies, which all of this can be found on sportrivalry.com. And so what we want to do from there is the repeated exposure to these comic strips and to these movies. We want to see if that plays a role or influences people's behavior toward a rival outgroup. And so one thing that we're trying to plan now is working with school-age children on a curriculum to expose them to these comic strips and to these stories, and then see how they retain the information, because we're just using comics and sport to reach the public. We're really talking about the in-group behavior and out-group derogation and that phenomenon. So one, we want to see how they retain the information, but two, we want to see if being exposed to these comic strips and to these movies, does that in some way change the way they would treat someone they typically see in an out-group. And so that's something we're working on right now that we're really excited about. And again, all of this information, there's a podcast and comics section on sportrivalry.com that you can look at. There's also another thing on there is I teach a class in Sport Rivalry. Yeah. So actually our course reading text is on the website that people can go and just hopefully understand more about the phenomenon. And the overall goal of this is to try and, through understanding, have people kind of realize, okay, just because someone wears a shirt of a rival team doesn't make them that significantly different than me, and then maybe that can carry over outside of the sport realm as well. We're seeing so much division right now in our country. Maybe this is a small, very, very small step in trying to add to that understanding. Discussion,
well. Man. Yeah, I mean, you're constantly finding new bedrocks here. This is a psychology of the violence and violent mentality that's struck our country right now, and this is a good way to especially reach at the kids first and get them.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh wow. Well, Once again, thanks again for being our guest. And the sportsrivalry.com is online. You can pull it up anytime.
Mm-hmm.
All that information is on there. Dr. Cody T. Havard, thanks so much for coming by and being a guest.
Thank you very much.
All right, and this has been Spotlight 92. We'll do it again next week. In the meantime, you're back for more of the best in jazz. This is U92 FM.